Thanks for joining me. I know it's been a long day of staring at screens, and I know what the graveyard keynote can be like. So I've put lots of videos and content in this presentation. Hopefully it's entertaining to everyone. And as has been mentioned, I'm an internet lawyer. I work with a lot of intellectual property issues in online space and have a lot of tech clients. But also support a lot of startups. So this is a topic that really excites me. But before we really start, I just wanted to mention that I was actually involved in the scaling of Brightest Young Minds about 15 years ago. And picture this, it was revolutionary for us to launch a viral email campaign instead of putting posters up on notice boards on different campuses, and to interview potential candidates. We had to physically fly to different cities and meet them in person. And I remember the tickets were still printed off for us. It was very exciting, but absolutely no social media, no digital e-tickets. Applicants were getting creative with their applications. They used to deliver their printed documents with their CVs in pizza boxes. I remember the first time we got a CV on a CD and someone put theirs on a memory stick. We thought this was so innovative. We were just blown away. So that just puts into perspective the old adage that we often overestimate how much things will change in the short term and underestimate how much they will change in the medium to long term. And this is really the original soundtrack to the developments we're seeing in the fourth industrial revolution. And at its pinnacle, that is the establishment of the universal metaverse. So let's start with what we know. The internet in its current form, it functions like a multiverse. So you've got different platforms. They've all built their own landscapes, user experiences, their own economies, but they have limited ways to interoperate. And they're typically classified by closed loop systems, owned audiences, and you can generally only access it through an app or a browser of some sort. But in the metaverse, which is held as the next iteration of the internet, or Web 3.0, you've got a vision of a digital world where you could lead a digital life. In other words, you can work, socialize, study, shop, bank, and relax, and move between different digital worlds with a single digital personality without losing your digital assets, and with a single or interchangeable digital currency, hopefully one with no exchange control or import duty. And this would require the use of screens, VR and AR devices, and potentially connectivity technologies that enable our physical and virtual worlds to merge in ways that we haven't even imagined yet. The easiest way for me to summarize this concept is just by showing you a video. It's about 3 minutes long, so why don't you just give it a view with me?
On 28 July, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg said during the company's earnings call that it would transition from a social media company to a metaverse company, sparking a renewed interest in the topic. But what is metaverse and why is it being picked to be the next big technological thing? In simple terms, metaverse is the convergence of physical, augmented, and virtual reality in a shared online space. Just like we have a physical persona that exists in the real world, we also have a digital persona which exists on the internet, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. What Metaverse does is converge the two in some way. It makes you exist in a virtual world where your opportunities are limitless. It removes the finite nature of the real world. Now, that doesn't mean you exist in two different worlds. It isn't like getting plugged as shown in The Matrix, but a more evolved version of what we saw in the movie Wall-E, and certainly not as realistic and sophisticated as it gets in Avatar, at least not yet. For a long time, Metaverse was just a term in the 1992 dystopian novel Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson. Inside Snow Crash's metaverse, individuals appear in digital avatars in a virtual world complete with companies, houses, and anything that resembles the real world. Another book, later a movie directed by Steven Spielberg, that popularized this concept was Ready Player One. The 2011 book by Ernest Cline was set in 2045, where people escape to a virtual reality game as the real world is plunged into crisis. In the game, you interact with fellow players and team up with them, much like what you see in the Matrix movie trilogy. But the metaverse isn't limited to these science fictions. It could be a lot more or a lot less depending on how the ecosystem evolves.
Sorry about that.
As Zuckerberg said, it's a virtual environment where you can be present with people in digital spaces. You can kind of think about this as an embodied internet that you're inside of rather than just looking at. We believe that this is going to be the successor to the mobile internet. What it means is that instead of interacting with your friends online, as is the case now, you can meet in respective of digital avatars using a virtual reality headset or any other device and get inside any virtual environment, be it an office, cafe, or even a gaming center, much like the popular games Fortnite and Roblox. Sparked by the COVID-19 pandemic, which pushed everyone across the world into their computer and mobile screens, Metaverse is the new bandwagon onto which tech companies are jumping on. Apart from Facebook, Microsoft, computer graphics firm Nvidia, and Epic Games is also exploring the metaverse space. Although it is still unclear what shape Metaverse will finally take, the complexity of the technology means it won't reach the final stages anytime soon. After all, even virtual reality is in its early stages. And as with any technological disruptions, it will be interesting to see how Metaverse will impact our lives and to what extent will it be bound by rules so that it doesn't come under scrutiny as most tech disruptions have.
Right, so it doesn't exist yet, but it is on the short-term planning of most tech companies and investors. And despite the apparent technological, political, and economic obstacles that the metaverse faces, some reckon that it could be feasible as early as 2025. And Mark Zuckerberg raised that you could have mass adoption by the end of the decade. So I'm going to jump to a slide that shows us who is most likely to be the citizens of this metaverse. And I've noticed I can't see the chat or questions. So what I suggest is we just move along, and perhaps at the end, I can answer all the questions all at once. So if we look at this nifty infographic by McCrindle, you'll see that even though the metaverse is being designed by millennials mostly, it's probably going to be inhabited mostly by those who were born after 1995. And if you look at this information here, this is a generation that is global, informed by peers at online forums. They're visual and very comfortable in a digital world with smart assistants, chatbots, headsets, and avatars. And it's Gen Z and Gen Alpha that will really soon make up the majority of the global workforce. And they're most likely to be the ones that determine who succeeds in this new world or in this new space. So it's important for you as leaders to understand that there's an importance and a responsibility to how we engage with the space, how we develop it, and that there are ramifications that your corporate actions could have on humanity as it appears in the metaverse. One of the companies who are pitched to be a strong contender to build the metaverse and support Facebook. And many believe they've got a suite of applications that are really primed as entry points into this metaverse. And I want to show you quickly what they imagine a realistic workspace to look like in the metaverse.
Christine, sorry,
Yes.
can you just pause the video? We heard your previous video loud and clear, but I'm just getting some feedback that this one isn't audible. Still nothing. We're still getting nothing on that video.
Well, let's just pause that. Sorry, Zanet, you couldn't hear the sound on that one.
Yeah, we heard the sound on the previous video clearly, but this one we didn't. I don't know if you muted yourself or.
No, I wouldn't worry about it too much. It was just background music. All the text was really there. And as you can see, this is a very sort of virtual and physically integrated workspace. And Chinese companies like ByteDance that created TikTok and Tencent are also making preparations by acquiring virtual reality companies and gaming companies. And they're also starting to file trademarks around Yan Wuzhou, which I believe is Chinese for metaverse. So we can see their thinking is in this direction as well. Bloomberg Intelligence actually thinks that in this $800 billion US market, that Chinese consumers are amongst the most positive on developments in the metaverse because they're already used to socializing in game and interactive technology of this nature. Now, I've got another video, but given we might have some sound problems, I won't play the whole video. But if you go online and you want to go check out Decentralized, this is really one of the platforms that has the fastest user-based growth. And especially in the pandemic-led virtualization and the advancements in technologies that enable these platforms, it's grown in the last 2 years into an extremely popular platform or world. And what's interesting about it is you're able to own a space or a plot of land, they call it, and develop a space there. And anyone basically with 3D modeling experience can design a site. So what we're seeing here is real life architects actually designing spaces in Decentraland. Now, of course, the land units don't have to be limited. They are currently limited to 90,000 odd. It might not stay that way, but it's kind of irrelevant because in the virtual space, proximity is less important than user attraction. So what drives the value of your plot in a virtual world is really how many users walk through there. And so things like gambling, meeting sites, co-working spaces, exhibitions, those are the types of sites that are common on virtual spaces like this. And they've become extremely popular. So some of the more successful ones are being sold for around about $1 million at the moment, which is crazy considering that this platform is roughly 2 or 3 years old. Now, rapid consumer buy-in, I mean, that's going to be crucial towards growing the metaverse. So to truly master it, you have to ask yourself, what would these citizens of the, the everyday people in the metaverse, what would they care about? And my guess, it's really just a guess, is that they're not going to think of IP and existence in the same way as we currently do. They're probably going to be more attent on community rules instead of laws. They'll probably be more focused on their image rights and the use of their data, where they store their cryptocurrency or their digital assets. So these are new concepts that are kind of evolving at the moment, and ones that not all legal systems deal with yet, but it does create a lot of opportunity for new businesses to evolve. I've got an avatar here just to chat through the basics of image rights and what's happening there at the moment.
Publicity, sometimes referred to as image rights, is the right to control the commercial use of one's identity, including your name, image, likeness, or other identifiers. Nowadays, any micro-influencer can obtain image rights and capitalize on them. Already issues relating to image rights are increasingly disputed in cases concerning the distinctive tattoos or victory moves of wrestlers, NBA, and football players. Even the distinctive shapes of certain car brands and equipment and dance moves, or emotes, as they are called in Fortnite, have been the subject of court battles. Epic Games has come under fire for using the Running Man and Floss emotes in WWE for character tattoos. This tension between having to create realism in the digital world without infringing IP rights is real.
Right, I hope you got that sound clip.
Yes, we heard that loud and clear. Thank you.
Wonderful. So basically, what the avatar is explaining there is that in order to portray yourself in a virtual world, you'll need a digital counterpart or twin. And that's why we're getting more and more cases where gaming companies that use, for instance, an image of a Hummer or sports persons' recognizable tattoos are actually getting sued because of that. We've even seen court cases around emotes or dance moves in Fortnite. And this will only become more of a problem, right? Because right now avatars are kind of gimmicky, they look cartoonish, but we've already seen avatars that are extremely lifelike. One of the subsidiaries of Epic Games, they've now started creating meta-humans. And as you can see here, this is extremely real. And again, you have companies like Facebook, for instance, who already have a global photo album where your image exists from various angles. So if they could automate the creation of your avatar and you don't have to go through the grueling process of building one or creating one, this could eliminate a big inconvenience to moving into the metaverse. And people who are really embracing having a digital counterpart are performers. They now have to consider digital representation. So these are what we call genies, and it's a marvelous way of scaling, as it allows a performer to have multiple audience for a single performance. They can be in more than one place at once. They can sell digital merchandise as well as physical items. And it just opens up new advertising, sponsorship, and branding opportunities with zero travel time and zero entourage. So Genies, which is the company, as I said, that creates these type of avatars, they already have 2 million clients, and their investors are some of the largest talent agencies in the world, and this isn't surprising at all. Another thing that's quite big in the metaverse will be entertainment, and we've already started seeing that with virtual concerts. So during the pandemic, you may have seen quite a lot of the top right type of concert there, where you've got real performers and the audience is sort of streaming into their screens. But when I'm talking about an in-game concert, it's really something quite different than looking at a performer who's on a stage. Players can view the performer from all different angles, even interact with them. And again, I'm not sure if the sound will come through, but I'll show you a quick clip of Travis Scott's performance on Fortnite.
Those goosebumps every time. I need that. Throw that to the side. At the gate outside, when they pull up, they give me loose. Yeah, jump out, boys. That's Nike boys stopping our coach. Right here, that's astronomical. I see you picked up all my ways. I feel responsible. You feel me? Get those goosebumps.
Right, so you could see that it's a very interactive style of entertainment. That concert was about 12 minutes long, had 12.5 million viewers. And the technology doesn't yet exist for all of them to stream it at once. So it was really a case of 50-person rooms times 200,000 all watching this show at the same time. But we have to admit that you couldn't have a real live concert with 12.5 million people anyway. So this is already closer to doing something on just a much larger scale with a bigger audience. Dressing your avatar and creating a digital life, that will require shopping for digital things. So it's not surprising at all that fashion brands are positioning themselves in this digital space. For its part, you've got Balenciaga, who now show their new fashion shows and latest collections in a virtual space. Companies like BMW have made a digital twin of their main factories, and the goal there is that you can test out improvements before you deploy them in the physical world, in the real factory. And then something I find quite interesting is something Louis Vuitton did. So they've basically attached a smart tag or an NFT to a physical high-priced item. And that then allows you to track the title and the authenticity of that luxury product. Now, they initially licensed this technology to competitors like Prada, Cartier, Bulgari, and it became so successful that these companies have actually now created a consortium called the Aura Blockchain Consortium, and together they are now battling fake products in this way. And I think that's a very novel use of NFTs. Decentralized finance, or DeFi, is going to be part and parcel of the metaverse. To facilitate payments in that space, cryptocurrency is inevitable, but I don't really have to say much about that. I feel like what's been said is all valid, and it's such a talking point that I can't really add anything more, except that I think it's simply inevitable. But another thing that's interesting will be embedded finance. And this is where a non-financial service provider, such as a retailer or a ride-hailing service, also attaches a financial service to their transaction point or their product. So you could be looking at payments processing, lending, or insurance. And certainly we know the metaverse will have a thriving financial sector. So you'll be able to provide loans, trade on exchanges, hold investments, take deposits by executing agreements that are known as smart contracts, and possibly create spaces where you can keep all your digital assets together. So whether you're a crook, a fool, or a true believer, decentralized finance or DeFi has the potential to rewire the way our financial system works. Now, the main currency of DeFi is Ether, or title deeds over digital assets. And we also refer to these as NFTs. These are just non-fungible tokens that are essentially digital assets or a piece of data or code that has unique properties or at least it's attached to an asset with unique properties that can't be replaced or substituted. So by attaching the NFT, usually authenticity is guaranteed through blockchain technology, which in turn is just a decentralized ledger that's maintained and verified by a peer-to-peer network. Now, ultimately, what an NFT enables is disintermediation, because no intermediary platform is required for content creation or distribution. In the current business model, you'll have a large tech or media company, and they'll gather an audience. And then through advertising revenue, typically they'll exploit that audience. But the bulk of their revenue then goes to the platform, not the content creators whose creativity arguably attracted that crowd in the first place. So this intermediation is a huge opportunity for creators. And already we're seeing NFTs growing ninefold in the last 2 years. It currently makes up about 1/10 of the annual art and antiques market. And if you go according to the growth and the data on platforms like OpenSea, even though there's a definite element of novelty, speculation, and greed, NFTs could easily become an asset class in their own right. And governments should really pay attention to the regulation of these and potential tax consequences. In South Africa, it could trigger exchange control issues. So NFTs is not something a regulator or a new business owner should just disregard as a fad. There are a few examples on this slide. We've got Beeple's collection of images at the top there, which famously sold for $69 million. Interestingly, this artwork is actually owned by the virtual personas of two owners of Metaverse. It's a fund, and as I mentioned earlier, there's Decentralized, and it's the same virtual personas who own the expensive land in Decentralized. So we've definitely got people who have gone straight into this world and believe there's high potential. And then, of course, you've got some skeptics who are not first adopters and sitting back and seeing what's going to happen. But brands are using NFTs to give you access to their concerts for life. NBA, the Top Shop, have minted NFTs into game clips. There's an example of Jack Dorsey's first tweet and Tim Berners-Lee's first code that birthed the World Wide Web. I believe these were both auctioned off and the proceeds were given to charity. But you've also then got things like CryptoPunks and CryptoKitties that can be traded and breed more NFT. Now, the value of these also range quite a bit, but you would probably be looking more in the range of sort of $200,000 for one of these. So much cheaper than people's artwork. And then you'll see the little red circles there. I find this one to be quite sensible and cool. These are Eula beats, and they are beatbox sounds that you can buy as an NFT. And the purpose there is to then sub-license the copyright in that beat. So to me, the purpose there makes a lot of sense. You can get a royalty from other people using your beats in their music. Now, as I said, NFTs can be transferred through smart contracts, and they can include any collection of rights. They can or cannot include copyright, which I find quite interesting. So it's 100% a new type of value or asset, and you decide what's linked to it. And another thing that's common for both artists and collectors is to use pseudonyms. So the nationalities and identities can be hidden from tax authorities. As far as I know, there's no regulation for NFTs in Africa at the moment, and any regulation that's in the pipeline is probably going to be focused at ICOs, securities, and fraud rather than IP and art. So this creates an interesting gap for the management of value. And if you are investing in NFTs, just remember that you will need to pass down passwords, private keys, and access information in your will. There are numerous stories about owners of Bitcoin that have lost important passwords and can no longer access their own investment. Another thing the metaverse needs is devices. Now, we're already aware of IoT and the Internet of Things, not least because of Google's Home Assistant and Amazon and all their devices, but companies like Apple and GoPro are also now allegedly bulking up their efforts in designing AR offerings, which some believe will ultimately replace iPhones. And the metaverse also heavily relies on deep learning and artificial intelligence. So while we think this is something to apprehend and looks, futuristic like Sophie, AI has already crept into our daily lives through chatbots, virtual assistants, smart maps, to name a few examples. AI also has the ability to write music, poetry, or books, diagnose patients, and invent patentable subject matter. Our firm recently secured a world first by achieving the registration of a patent where the listed inventor, Davos, is a non-human intelligence or artificial neural system. So the owner claims that this AI is the sole inventor of a food container that improves grip and heat retention. Now, while this is an isolated incident and certainly the ruling is in keeping with technology trends and what our law says, I do want to pose a more philosophical question, and that is whether we really want a precedent to be that the owner of the AI is also the owner of the AI's output or invention. Personally, I just feel that there are quite a few mega companies with large data banks and resources that will be able to really monopolize the patenting of inventions. And I think this could be a dangerous situation for innovation. So it's a question we have to debate. AI curators and assistants, these are becoming very ordinary. And this really gives us a glimpse into how citizens of the metaverse may perceive brands. Now, practically, a trademark really acts as a shortcut to information, and it gives you information about the quality, the price point, and other characteristics of a product or service based on your selection criteria. Now, increasingly, we have AI relying on data and inputs obtained from various sources to suggest or even make our purchasing decisions for us in accordance with our search history, our browsing habits, our income, age, location, preferences, etc. Now, in the US, there was an incident where a little girl was playing and asked Alexa to order her a dollhouse and a tin of biscuits. And of course, Alexa, who is always listening, did so, and the dollhouse arrived the next day. So, finding this very amusing, a local news anchor retold the story. And when he was broadcasting that news excerpt, he said the phrase, "Alexa, order me a dollhouse." And of course, everyone who had an Alexa device then picked up this sentence, and Alexa ordered hundreds of dollhouses in the state of Texas. So that's amusing again, but what I find fascinating about this story is that when these dollhouses arrived, none of them were from a single supplier. What Alexa had done is ordered dollhouses based on that household's income, browsing history, preferences, location, and other information sourced from anywhere. And that just gives you such a practical example of how online shopping is happening at the moment. AI could have bought those dollhouses from a seller that identifies as NZD9 or any other random string of characters, because unlike a human, an algorithm doesn't need a pronounceable word to associate with a particular product. And even if you have built a recognizable brand that is searched for by name, the AI can still present similar alternatives in the search result. So ultimately, there may be businesses for whom trademarks become irrelevant. And regardless, the winners will be those brands who really understand that to navigate the market, they will have to understand both their target market as well as the algorithms that find and offer their products for the right audience. In this metaverse space, trademarks are also likely to be more inventive. We're already seeing in several IP offices the filing and registration of non-traditional marks. So as well as distinctive patterns, you could have space layout, you can see the Apple store there. You could have hand gestures, moving images, or even the shape of the stadium is a trademark, or even the way water sprays out of a jet ski. All of these are trademarks, and these types of marks will become more popular for sure. And brand owners will definitely be aiming for things that can appear both in a physical and a virtual medium. Now, some of the issues with the metaverse, of course, is crime and law enforcement. Along with data security problems, there'll be new crimes potentially, but we're expecting most will be based on impersonation and identity theft or fraud. Ponzi schemes and cons are just easier to pull off if you have access to so many people in a place with no clear laws or policing. In terms of real-world standard setting and law enforcement, which is what we have to rely on initially, the challenges are not only technical and capacity-based, but also jurisdictional, because it's not clear who, if anyone, will be the ultimate authority in a particular crime occurring in the metaverse. Another major aspect of the metaverse would be data, surveillance, and privacy. Our constitution and people like Tim Cook, they might say that privacy is a human right, but just like any other human right, you will have to pay for it if you want a better quality. So we're already seeing this with Apple's premium privacy product that's launched a few weeks ago, and how you can pay extra for certain privacy features on different subscriptions. Keep in mind, it's also a right that can be justifiably limited, but that doesn't even matter because it seems to be one that we give up freely for security, for health reasons, for inclusion, and sometimes just for plain convenience. Africans, how do we maximize the benefits from this inevitable merging of our physical and our virtual worlds? Well, digital inclusion here is the first step to opportunity. Inclusion in the metaverse is simply connectivity, and this means availability, quality, and affordability of electricity, devices, and internet. So here are my views. At the very least, we need to reduce power outages, and citizens and investors need to be assured that there will not be internet shutdowns or the blocking of services at any time. We then also need to address the quality of connectivity and the cost of use. Secondly, Africa is a valuable resource in its youth. Its relatively young population of 1.3 billion people allegedly has an average age of 19, and this falls nicely in the age group of the metaverse population. And we need to give them relevant skills. And it's tempting to think that these skills would be STEM type skills, but the metaverse will probably have tools that enable development without requiring coding skills. So I'm going to say that in addition to technical skills, I would propose a curriculum that also emphasizes creativity and reasoning And this could include animation, music composition, sound engineering, and perhaps political science. Because who wants to escape a virtual world or to a virtual world, which has all the defects of our physical one, including gaming and gamification, both in educational setup and in the workplace. That would be a great way of acclimatizing to a semi-virtual existence. I also expect wellness education and related offerings to become more sought after as we confront certain questions and limitations in the virtual world. And thirdly, clarity and harmonization among the laws of African states. For example, certainty regarding the protection of image rights and traditional knowledge, coordinated and considered directed policy making. This would all position Africa as a strategic region, both for the development and the deployment of worlds and spaces and tools in the metaverse. I have to skip through all these templates, but that's the thinking and where I am. Thank you all for being here with me. And if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer them now, or for you to just reach out to me by email and get in touch. Let's have a chat in the metaverse. Thanks, Sinead.
No, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Christine. I learned a lot. I learned about a whole new universe and fascinating to see your take on it and how developed it actually is and how quickly it's scaled over the very short lifespan that it's had so far. And just interesting to see how even celebrities are taking advantage of creating little minions of themselves in the digital space and performing. I think that's incredible. We do have some questions. The first one is from Shilpi Jain. Shilpi asks, Christine, one of the earlier presenters talked about NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Is there a risk with NFTs that access to the internet tools will start getting more and more elite, i.e. paying for access to digital items on an increasing scale? So how do you view that, and what does that mean for us? Do you want to answer that question, or should we take a couple more?
Mute.
Okay, still on. Now you're off mute. Christine, can you just click on your mute button? Try talking now.
Hi, I'm still on mute.
No, we can hear you. We can hear you.
There you go. Hi, I'm back. I just noticed the little red going on my mute button. It's anyone's guess at this point in time. I don't think that access to digital assets will become more expensive. The market for NFTs really isn't about the artwork itself. There's often copies of those. As you can see, I can take them off the internet and put them on my slide deck. And even with the Beeple's case, there's a court case now, I believe, where the auction terms, which were not very clear to all the bidders, said that even if you're unsuccessful, the second and third and fourth in line also still paid for a copy of that artwork. And of course, people are upset about that, and those people don't really want to pay for it. And I think it signals that for NFTs, it's all about the title to the original. So like with really high-priced art pieces, we can have copies and posters of those because the copyright is expired. But owning the original, that's where the value lies. And so I don't think it will dilute or diminish our access or restrict our access to artworks. I think it will just become a new market for trading in things where you really have a certificate and provenance saying, I own the original. And that's essentially what you'll be acquiring as the investor.
Okay, great. And then we also have another question, which I think is quite interesting. Do you recommend youth to start their metaverse avatars and actually start creating these avatars in the metaverse. What is your take on that?
I'm conflicted to give you this answer. I'm conflicted because personally, I am quite nervous about where this could go. But practically, I would say yes. Get an avatar, get used to it. It might not be the same platform you use in 5 years' time, but having a starting point, having a existence, starting to build up online credit, online currency. This is going to happen. The train has left the station, and if you want to be in on it, you might as well start now. This presentation, I've given it to older generations, and I said to them, the irony here is that nothing I've just said would teach a 13-year-old anything. They know this. They are buying skins on Fortnite. They are gifting and generating incomes through building games on Roblox. So it's already happening. And if you want to get in there, go for it. And just for this audience, I really want to encourage people, do it and go put an African stamp on it. Let's not sit here in 3 to 5 years' time and say, oh, we were culturally appropriated. Why are these, US companies or Chinese companies making money from African artwork and purple economy that really has an African essence? Go do it. Go claim it. There are amazing artists, musicians, creatives, and we do see a few African, NFTs getting attention. But really, I think if we could really just click on the metaverse and put the African stamp on there, that's ours for the taking. And so all the new business owners, startups, people interested in training, think of virtual reality, think of the metaverse, think of a digital office, a digital space, a workspace for your team, even if it's not an external product. Just start thinking that way and become a part of it. Let's not get left behind.
Great. I like the drive that you have there. It's staking our claim to African-born ideas, the purple economy, our artwork, our design, which is quite unique and beautiful. People really like your talk, Christine, and I think we are at time. People did want to see your slide with your email address one more time, please. I think people are keen to get in touch. Another question is, will they have access to your slides? I think that's up to you. If you'd like to share that with them, they can get in touch with you over email, and you can do that.
I'll chat to Rajiv about it. If there's no copyright issues, you can have it all. It's not me that will be the hurdle there. I'll just have to check that it's safe to share all of it. But all the videos are on YouTube, and you can really go educate yourself. There's such cool content about things that are launching and happening, and there's a lot to read. So really, even if the slides can't be shared, I encourage you just to go and have a look what's out there.
Right. Well, great. I think that's brings us to the end of our formal processions today. We are going to now meet in our casual hangout rooms so that delegates can actually meet one another and have a casual conversation. And Christine, thanks one more time for taking the time this afternoon to have that closing keynote. I found it fascinating. Someone who has spent time in the sort of tech central place like San Francisco and Silicon Valley, but that was a couple of years ago, and seeing how the metaverse is actually just mushroomed and grown is incredible. So maybe we'll see you in the metaverse in some manner, shape or form. I'll go create my metaverse humanoid or metaverse creation, whatever you want to call it, and I'll meet all your delegates there. And maybe we'll have a BYM summit in the not too far away future in some sort of metaverse version. This one being sort of the genesis of our first digital conference. And yeah, it was just very insightful. So thanks for your time, and also great to hear that you were involved with BYM many years ago, and you taking the afternoon on your day to speak to to the delegates of this cohort and share your insights. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks again for having me. And when you do have that BYM summit in the Metaverse, please invite me. It will be awesome to join you.
Great. We'll come to you for some legal advice on that one. Thank you.
Great. Bye, everyone.